Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the best animated shows ever, so far, with MC and Troy.
I'm Troy.
And I'm MC.
And this is the best animated shows ever so far. The podcast where we watch, discuss, and rank every single animated show ever, eventually. And eventually. We'll get there. Give us some time, man.
Yeah.
We're working on it. Jeez.
If we haven't covered your favorite animated show yet,
what should they do, MC?
They should contact us
on
Twitter. At our on our Twitter, it's base SF cast. So that's BASESF cast on Twitter. Just add us, and we'll. Mostly Troy is the one who interacts with people because I didn't want to change the tone of how the Twitter sounded. Because if I go in there and I start messaging people with my tone, which is a little bit more bombastic and weird than Troy.
MC, bombastic and weird.
Yeah. But that's the sort of thing that I wanted to try and avoid. Although I'm also not very active on Twitter, so maybe I should start jumping into those conversations just from my Twitter account.
Yeah, I mean, I have been intending to do that whenever I respond to somebody on Twitter to kind of switch to my own account. I'm not very good about doing that, but I mean to do that.
Oh, and one more thing. That Troy has another podcast that he does. Now, it's one of my favorite things is these insanely long like titles. I can't even remember the name of the podcast. It's that long now. It's Troidal Power Presents. It's something like Play or something. Oh God, it's so long. How do you remember it?
But you mean how do I remember Troidal Power Presents Power Playthroughs podcast with Troidal Power?
Yeah. See, I can't remember all that, but the reason our name is so long actually is because and it just makes me ridiculously happy when that sort of thing happens. So when Troy did that, I was like, yes.
Yeah, that show is definitely named in your honor because of your joy for unnecessarily long names.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's terrible.
I do have another podcast.
Yeah.
If you search the Power Playthroughs podcast, it should come up. If you search Troidal Power, it should come up. You can find me on Twitter. It's at TPPTPPTPWTP because I'm a monster.
You are a monster. And I love it.
I'm actually going to be, if I haven't already put up an episode by the time this is coming out, it'll be coming up soon. I'm going to play a little bit of the Dragon Ball Adventures, I believe it's called. It's a Game Boy Advance game. So I'm going to be playing a little bit of that over on Troidal Power Presents the Power Playthroughs podcast with Troidal Power. So yeah, crossover again, just like I did with SpongeBob and Biker Mice from Mars. And maybe I'll go back in time and do it for My Hero Academia. I'm sure there's a My Hero Academia.
If there's not one out now, there will be one out soon.
I know there's one on the Switch I've seen at Walmart.
There you go.
Academia video games. My Hero One's Justice is what it's called.
All right. There you go.
Maybe I will go back in time and put up an episode of that during our My Hero Academia series.
Fair enough. But one of the really good things about having that is it also relates to your Twitch which is just Troidal Power, isn't it?
Yeah, Twitch
Yeah.
is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both stream video games on Twitch, so check out twitch.tv/Troidal Power and twitch.tv/ also known as MC. And you
All
can
one word.
see us playing the video games.
So this is episode 2 of Dragon Ball. It's the Emperor's Quest, or No Balls?
What the no balls? So what the no balls is what it's called in Japan, and it came out in Japan on March 5th of 86. Here in English, it came out September 16th of 95, and then re-released on August 21st of 2001. And I've just realized we're out of order, MC, because I'm supposed to talk about behind the scenes stuff before we talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Which actually matters in this context, because what I want to talk about is how Dragon Ball kind of went from being a manga to being a show, and then being a show in English, because it's kind of interesting. Before it was a TV show, it was the manga, as we talked about before, created by Toriyama. But he actually had another manga which became an anime before Dragon Ball, which was called Dr. Slump. Do you know this show at all?
No, not at all.
I'd never heard of it before, but according to Wikipedia, it's about the adventures of a little girl robot, her creator, and the other residents of the bizarre Penguin Village. Oh, which sounds awesome. That sounds like such a fun and adorable show. Apparently, it wasn't super successful though. I read that the editor who was working with Toriyama took a more active role in the creation of Dragon Ball, because that other show hadn't been very successful. And one of the things they did is they made like a huge show Bible before they started, which is pretty common now, but I don't think it was common, especially for an anime at the time. So even though the show came out as Toriyama was making the manga, they actually made a Bible specifically for the show of like the world and the things that are going to happen, and even going so far as like outlining the merchandise that they were going to sell to go along with the show. So this was like built to be a massive franchise from the very beginning, which I think is kind of cool, because it worked. As we talked about last time, this has become over a $20 billion franchise. So clearly that planning worked out well. So even though the editor was taking a more active role, Toriyama, the creator, was still really heavily involved with the process of translating from the manga to the show. One of the things that he helped with was figuring out the right color palette, because the manga is black and white.
Black and white, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
there's no color. Yeah, so as he was working with the animators, that the first like drafts that they were doing, the color palette wasn't right for his vision. So he still had enough control in the process that he was able to like make them shift the types of colors they were using, which I thought was pretty cool. That seems like a good thing for the creator to be able to do. And then he was also involved with the casting of the original Japanese voice actors. So he actually like was part of the process of figuring out which voice actor was going to play which role.
Nice.
Go ahead.
So he sort of had a real good influence on the design in the color scheme and the tone of the show through the voice acting.
Yeah, absolutely. And he even then it kind of became what's it called? The snake eating the circle or eating his tail? I can never remember what the word is.
Uruborealis or something like that.
Yeah, it became that thing because he liked the voice actor who played Goku so much in the original Japanese anime that he has said that he heard that voice going forward when he was writing the character. So like that voice actor became the voice of Goku even as he was writing the manga. Like that's Goku's voice forever, which I think is really cool.
That's a cool. Yeah.
The show came over to America with an English translation first in 1989, which is weird because if you've been listening, I've been talking about the episodes first coming out in 95 and then coming out again in 2001. This show's actually come to the United States 3 separate times. So the first one was in 1989. It was a translation and dub by Harmony Gold USA. They dubbed only 5 episodes and then 1 80-minute long feature, which was a combination of 2 separate Japanese Dragon Ball movies. They like smushed 2 movies together.
Oh,
and
weird.
ran it in a test market, ran these 5 episodes and that one feature in test markets, and then scrapped the project. So it was never broadcast to the general public. It only played in a few select test cities,
Oh,
which is weird.
so that is really weird. I'm guessing they were like, this show isn't going to work in America without some edits.
I think that might have been part of the issue. The Wikipedia page that I was reading didn't really go in depth on why they decided not to push forward.
I also believe that like America's puritanical beginnings sort of have an influence on it as well. Like they thought it might be a little bit too raunchy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is probably part of it. And part of the reason I think that is because even when it did come over to English, it was edited. So we'll talk more about that in a second here. So that was in 1989. Then in 1995, Funimation picked up the rights to Dragon Ball. Funimation, which eventually does bring over all of Dragon Ball and all of Dragon Ball Z to the United States. So in 95, they did 13 episodes. They dubbed 13 episodes. They aired them that year and then canceled it due to low ratings. So they tried.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they brought it over here in like late 90s at some point.
2001 is when they actually brought Dragon Ball over successfully. So 95 they tried, and then in 2001.
No, I think in Australia.
Oh, in Australia, over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be. So they did the 13 episodes in 95. So they might have released those 13 episodes, or they might have aired those 13 episodes in Australia later on in the 90s.
I should actually look that up if.
I guess I should be trying to find out details for Australian releases too.
No, I should be the one doing that actually.
Yeah, all I've got is English air date. Is all I'm seeing.
Oh no, just that. Okay, the vacuum started back up. I'm not actually getting it. It was real. It's really weird. It's like giving me everything but what I actually want. Yeah, it's telling me other stuff, but it's not actually what I want. It's like, Super's coming out this time. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Oh well. Yeah. So we probably got it in the late 90s. I think there was airing of Dragon Ball at some point, but it was 2001. No, it was before that I thought we got Dragon Ball Z.
It was. Dragon Ball Z actually was 1996. So they tried to bring Dragon Ball over in 95, canceled it, and then immediately brought over Dragon Ball Z.
Well,
which is
it's
weird.
Such a better tone for a Western audience, but
yeah, I think that's true. It's more of the like action soap opera rather than the like comedy adventure, and I think that fits better for what Japanese audiences expect from an anime.
Yeah, but so all that happens, and we get, and then in 2001 they try to re-release Dragon Ball.
Yep. So between 2001 to 2003, so over the course of 2 years, they brought over all of Dragon Ball. So that's where like the DVD set that I have of the whole show is the 2001 to 2003 version that they put together.
Funimation put together. Yeah, they did a whole bunch of shows. Like they just started cranking out all the shows as fast as possible. Like as soon as they got the thing, they would write up the scripts and do all the voices in like 2001. It was just like really fast.
Yeah.
They tried to crank them out.
I think a lot of that, I would guess, is thanks to Toonami, because Toonami, I think, really popularized anime with, my generation in the United States, at least. So I think that's what kind of caused a boom of anime in the late 90s, early 2000s.
So there was that, the Cartoon Network over here ran it at night, like the Funimation block or whatever, the Toonami block. But there was also in the mornings, there was a show called Cheese TV that would run Dragon Ball and other animes like the Digimon series and stuff like that, and Pokemon. Like, it ran all that in the mornings, and I would actually have to record Dragon Ball Z while as I left for school. I would throw in like 180-minute tape into the VCR and hit record. Yes, that's how old I am. I used to record my stuff on like the VHS, and then I'll get home, pull it out of the recorder in the main living room, and take it into my room and throw it in my in my VCR player there.
And watch all your anime that way?
Yeah.
I definitely, when my parents eventually got a TiVo, I definitely like filled that hard drive immediately by recording everything that Toonami aired.
Yeah. But like, I didn't have that until like the almost mid 2000s. So a lot of I was already past that. Like, I was onto the internet by like 2005. That was when I got out of high school. I got addicted to WoW in 2005 because I just got out of high school. I wasn't going to university, and I was looking for a job. And because I wasn't previously employed, it was being really hard because I also didn't have my license at that time. I've gotten my license and I've had a job for a while now, but there was a good like year and a half there where I couldn't really find a job, and I was playing WoW because it was what else was I going to do?
Yeah. It's easy to fall into that addiction. And sounds like, so were you watching stuff while you played WoW?
Oh, yeah. So that's the thing. If I wasn't playing WoW, I was looking up anime online, downloading it, and putting it on. Like that was shows that I could have found like for like on TV and stuff and recorded it. But I found it. I was becoming. It was easier to get it off the computer and put it on my TV, and then actually like scheduling anything to record it. It was just easier. It was like it was the mid 2000s, and now I've got all these streaming things, so I don't have to download anything anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
it's so good.
Accessible media is so good.
Yeah.
We
still haven't even got into the show yet.
I have one last behind the scenes point, and then we can get to the episode. So when Funimation did bring over the show, even in the 2001 version, when they brought over Dragon Ball, they edited it pretty heavily for content. They did a lot of editing for violence, mostly like removing blood and things like that. They also edited out drug and alcohol references and sexual content. This included like adding in clothes on scenes, like they would digitally go in and draw clothes in places where they weren't, or even adding in a chair. In this episode, there's a scene where Goku's standing naked, and on the originally aired English version, there is a chair in front of Goku, so you cannot see his private parts. Whereas on the DVD release, and what you'll find usually when you're watching it streaming, it's the original uncensored version of it, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. I watched this streaming on Anime Labs because it has all of Dragon Ball, like all of it, like all the movies, all the TV shows, everything. And so I watched the first 3 episodes on here, and I was like, oh, sweet. And this is actually one of the few animes that I can still watch in English and it doesn't
Right.
disturb me as much as other animes because the mouth flaps seem to line up fairly okay, but there's also not a lot of mouth flapping, like, and it's pretty like it's simplified mouth flaps. Like the mouths on all the like the Dragon Ball characters are they they're not complicated mouths. Whereas you find in more animes these days, there's like a defined mouth movement, and when
Yeah.
it's English and they don't match up, it really takes me out of it.
Yeah, they don't do like individual sounds. I looked at animation for a while. I like taught myself some base level animation, and there's like 17 different mouth shapes that you can do to accurately show how a mouth moves when somebody's talking for different sounds. And Dragon Ball definitely doesn't do that. Like it's a very simplified version
It's like
of mouth
5.
shapes. Yeah, it's totally effective. Like it works well for the show.
Yeah,
But I think you're right. I think that probably helps with watching a dubbed version of it rather than a subbed version because you don't notice if things don't sync up quite the same way.
yeah.
It's kind of a cool detail. Um, the last point on the censorship stuff is related to the name of the episode. So as we said before, this episode in Japan is called "What the No Balls," whereas in English it was called "The Emperor's Quest," and that's because that scene, the "What the No Balls" scene, didn't exist when this episode aired on U.S. television.
You mean the part where Goku takes off her panties?
Yep, that just didn't happen on the US version of it, which is weird because that's actually a plot point in the next episode is that her panties have been removed. And I don't know what they did with that, but apparently that scene just didn't exist when this initially aired on US television.
Yeah.
Which is weird. It's a weird act of censorship. Um yeah. You want to get into it?
Yeah.
All right.
So it opens up and they're back on the bike and they're just going through the countryside and it's getting dark.
Yep, they
It's starting to get into late into the afternoon.
they're getting ready to set up camp basically, and Goku's all worried that she's going to use magic because he says Grandpa says not to use magic unless you're helping someone, and Bulma says I am helping someone. She's pretty and she's got blue hair, and then she tosses out another dino capsule and it makes like a plush like 2-bedroom home.
Yep.
I don't think
no,
it's
a
actually a
1-bedroom.
studio, but still.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's big. It looks cozy. It's got electricity. It's got a TV.
Better than a tent.
Mm-hmm. It's
That's
a heck
true.
of a lot better than a tent.
I've actually got a note here in my thing that says eating amphibians and reptiles is gross.
Yeah.
There's a point where Goku's like he's complaining that he's hungry and he's like, oh, how about snake or I think he says turtle or something. Oh no, frogs.
Oh, frogs, lizards, snakes. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, how about we have a frog or something like that, and she's like, ew, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's that note.
And he stinks too. That's kind of the next big point that happens.
It's like Goku's learning so much about the world and like how like different his life being a hermit with his granddad out in the middle of a mountain, like in the valley or whatever, it is different than what the rest of the world is living with because there's a TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns it on in this scene, in this next scene, right after they pop open the studio house thing that is in a capsule. They open it, and he walks in, and he turns on the TV, and there's like a whole romance scene, and he's like, ew, and he changes the channel and stuff, and he's like, "There's people stuck in this screen." But that leads into Bulma getting close to Goku, and apparently Goku smells real bad, and he needs to take a bath.
Yeah, and he is completely unaware of what a bath is.
Yeah.
So Bulma says she'll show him. And then I think it just cuts to Goku naked, basically, right?
Yeah, it's Goku naked.
So he comes in and he's holding a towel and he's naked, and Bulma's like, "You're supposed to cover up the front."
Yeah, so he puts it in front of his face.
He holds it in front of his face. Goes like this. It's very cute.
And his boy parts are very evident still.
Unless you were watching it on broadcast American television, in which case there was apparently a chair that he was just standing behind like Austin Powers.
Yeah.
So she chucks him in the tub and is scrubbing him down and tries to tug his tail off of him so that she can wash his back. This is where she finally realizes, oh snap, you actually have a tail.
Yeah.
Goku says it's because all boys have them, and this is where she goes into like almost a what's his name, Suzuki Midori. What's his name?
Izuki. Yeah, I know Midoriya.
Midoriya. She goes into like a Midoriya style like panic attack in her head where she's like, hang on, do all boys have tails? I've never seen a boy naked from behind. Maybe they all have tails and I've never realized it before.
Do they just keep it in their pants?
No one keeps it in their pants in Dragon Ball. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that no one keeps it in their pants in Dragon Ball.
But yeah, she's freaking out because he picks up the thing and she's like, I was going to wash your back. And he's like, I don't need your help. And he uses his towel to wash his back with the scrubber, with the loofah.
It seems so convenient to have a tail. He really gets a lot of use out of it. So after his bath, Bulma decides she wants to take a bath as well. And since she doesn't have a tail, Goku comes in to offer to help scrub her back.
Yeah.
She's really upset about it. Yeah. Now, this is an interesting one because this is another change from the Japanese version to the English version. This is where Goku being 14 comes up, like I mentioned in the last episode.
Okay.
So in the American version, she freaks out and screams at Goku because she's like, no, I don't want a tail. Blah, 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 blah. Why do you keep talking about we wanted a tail? In the Japanese version, where this was originally animated, what happened is she's talking to him about like, you're not supposed to be in here even though you're a little boy. And he says, I mean, I am 14. And that's what makes her freak out is she realizes that like, even though he seems young, he's a lot older than she thought he was. And that makes her more uncomfortable with him being in the room while she's naked.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it does make sense.
And she kind of gets frustrated with him at this point in the show. She's in the bath and she's just like, get out, and she's like all frustrated and just like annoyed at him. She's like, I don't need your help. And that's when it cuts to Emperor Pilaf, and he's daydreaming at this point, I think. Is that next episode?
No, yes, that is next episode.
Is that next episode?
Yeah, this episode is just Shu is coming back to report that he failed to recover a ball.
Yeah. And he's like, Pilaf's sitting there having this massive feast, and he's just pigging out. And Shu comes in and he's like, oh, I've come back empty-handed. And Pilaf's like, why? And he's like, I'm hungry. And there's just all this food out everywhere. And Pilaf's like, too bad, get out there and find me a Dragon Ball.
Yeah. Pilaf's a jerk.
Yeah.
And then he farts because, again, this is a kid's show for kids.
Yeah.
Pilaf farts and freaks out about it. He's like, did you hear that? I think you did. And he's super upset with Shu for hearing that he farted. So he runs across the room and pushes a button that like causes giant robot arms to shoot out and suspend Shu in the air.
Yeah. And then he gets something out that he's going to cut off his limbs with.
Yeah, man. He pulls out a chainsaw.
Yeah.
What the heck?
And then because Shu's all freaking out and he's like apologizing and he's like, I did it. It was me. Even though it was clearly Pilaf who farted.
Pilaf's got some issues, man. If he farts in front of someone, he threatens to kill them until they own the fart. That's weird. That's weird, dude. So he decides to let him go because he was honest, quote unquote.
Yeah, and that's when
Agent May.
May comes in, and she's like, an agent from Skull Valley has said that there's a Dragon Ball or something. There's a glowing orb or something out there. And it could be a Dragon Ball. So Shu and Mai jump in a plane and head off to Skull Valley, pretty much. And Pilos, like he orders them off to go find this Dragon Ball.
Yeah, finds what he thinks is a Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Then it cuts back to Bulma and Goku. They are post-bath now, having dinner, which consists of tasteless bread and coffee. That Goku
which is
hates
fine for Bulma.
Yeah, Bulma loves it. Goku hates it. Which this is another great little moment of Goku wisdom. Bulma goes, "How do you expect to grow big and strong if you don't eat right?" And he goes, "Thanks for the advice, Bulma," and gets up to go outside and hunt some wild animals.
Yeah, he does. He gets up and he goes outside, and the first thing you see him catch is a centipede, and you're like, ew.
Gross. So gross. And he says, Bulma can probably eat this whole centipede on her own. I'll have to find something else. Dude, she ain't gonna eat that centipede. No. I don't know what to tell you, but she ain't gonna do it.
Oh, and then it cuts back to Shu and Mai, and they're flying over Skull Valley, because this is the same scene, because Goku looks up and sees the aeroplane flying overhead and goes, ooh, a big bird.
Yep.
That's chasing after it.
Yeah.
And they land in Skull Valley, which is full of skeletons.
Just so many skeletons.
Yeah. Like everywhere. And it turns out like they're there, and Goku shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's ready to get the bird because he thinks it's a bird, and is like, I'll fight you for that bird. It's mine. I call dibs.
Yeah, and then there's a light. Or is the light before? No, the light shows up before Goku shows up, because they're like, oh, let's investigate that light. And as they start to walk away to go investigate the light, that's when Goku shows up. Yeah. And he's like, I'll fight you for the bird. Then, let's see. At this point, there's more glowing, but the glowing turns into eyeballs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out they're surrounded by a wolf pack.
So many wolves. So many wolves. So we get a cool action scene.
Oh, well, first the Shu and Mai start freaking out about all these wolves, and they start running back to the plane. And Goku's like, no, that's my bird.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Don't steal my bird.
And then he starts beating up on all the wolves.
Mm-hmm.
There's this massive action scene where, because they start running, the wolves pounce.
And Goku just beats the crap out of them.
Oh, yeah.
I really like the animation style in this, because it does two anime tropes in this fight scene that I really like. One is where, like, it'll freeze frame the action in a, like, painted style for a second. So instead of looking like, flat colors of 2D animation, it's suddenly like this cool, pretty painted action scene. And then the other one it does is where, I don't know what it's called. There's probably a specific name for this, but that thing where somebody's flying through the air, and instead of a normal background, it's just like a single color background with like streaks of light going across it. That's just, every time I see that, I'm like, yeah, this is good stuff. Makes me happy every time.
It does do that. Let's see.
There's got to be a name for that.
Oh yeah, because Mai and Shu are they just bolted at this point. They've gotten back to the plane. And
they take off and they're out.
and Goku's like, "Hey, my bird is going away." So he chases after the plane after beating up the whole wolf pack, and knocks a plane out of the sky.
Wait, does he?
Yeah, he kicks it.
I did not note that. I just noted that he took a wolf back to eat.
Yeah, no, he kicks the, and then he's like, "Oh, this bird's no good. It's all hard and made of metal or something like that."
Does he really? How did I miss
Yeah,
this?
there's it's like a 10-second clip, and,
Oh
and
yeah,
my and Shu are like on the ground or something, all hurt and stuff.
he uses the power pole and vaults up and kicks the side of the plane,
Yeah,
and it goes off and crashes, and then he pokes it with the power pole and goes, "This isn't a bird, huh?" I completely
yeah.
missed that. I watched this episode twice, and I did not track that happened. Weird.
Well, then he heads back to the uh he heads
The
back to the
campsite?
campsite. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, do I call it a campsite or the homestead at this point?
The temporary homestead?
Yeah, it's really weird. They head back to the capsule home, and he's trying to convince Bulma to eat something that he's brought back, which is a centipede and a wolf.
Just a whole wolf.
Yeah, I love how he cooks it as well. The centipede's on a stick, like swelled up, and the wolf is just impaled all the way through, and he's got it over the top of the fire on a spit.
I mean, if you were gonna roast a wolf over a fire, I suppose spit roasting would be the way to do it, right?
I mean, yeah, after you skinned it and stuff, but it's still got like
Nah, just burn all
hair
that
and
off.
yeah. Oh, it's terrible. That must have smelled awful.
So gross. So gross.
And then he eats, I guess, because it cuts back to him going back inside a little bit later, and they're getting ready for bed.
Mm-hmm.
And Goku's like, "Oh, there's plenty of space on this bed for both of us." And Bulma's like, "No, you're sleeping on the floor."
Hang on.
What?
I just realized. I had the oh my gosh. So I watched the dub version, but I have Hulu pulled up with the subtitle version.
Yeah.
And it's got some stuff. So I just realized that the dialogue was kind of weird on the scene that we were on. So I just went back to the bathing scene, and I'm gonna see if this has the original version.
Oh wow, really?
Who does he think he is? Calling me a witch and a goblin when he's actually the weird one. That's definitely not what she said in the English one. So then she leans back, she turns and sees him, and she gets all embarrassed. She dunks down in the tub, then she comes up, says, "What are you doing in here?" And he goes, "You help wash me, so I'll help wash you."
That's pretty much what it says.
She says, "No thanks, now leave me alone, scram." Girls sure are weird. You have butts up here, too? Don't be stupid, that's not a butt, they're bosoms. Bosoms? And she goes, "Babies like them, and boys, too." And he goes, "I don't like your butt." She goes, "I just told you, it's not a butt. And besides, it's 10 years too early for a little kid like you to be interested in these things." And he goes, "I'm not a little kid." And she goes, "Oh, really? How old are you then?" 14. And she goes, 14? Yeah, 14. And that's where she's blowing the bubbles under her nose. And then it shows him running away and she's throwing all the shit at him. And she goes, "Peeping Tom, pervert, you're only 2 years younger than me."
Yeah, see, that's weird. Like
That's weird.
That's not at all in the dub version.
Yeah. Sorry for that little diversion. I just realized, I'm like, oh snap. Hulu, I think, has the original subtitles on this. We can actually see what it said. Well, that's
weird.
interesting. Yeah. So what made me realize it is that the bed scene, he's bouncing on the bed, and he says, on this one, he says, "This futon is so nice and fluffy, and it's been so long since I've slept with someone." And she goes, "With someone? Get real. You're sleeping on the floor. Here, you can have this blanket." Wow, that's interesting. It's very different in the dub version. Not very different, but different.
No, yeah, the differences are noticeable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Sorry, that was a huge sidetrack. I got super distracted by that.
Yeah. No. Well, the thing is right after this scene, is the bit where Goku finally takes off her panties.
We finally got to that moment. So the next morning,
Goku wakes up and he goes and lays on her lap.
She's kind of laying like all akimbo on the bed, and he's like, "There's plenty of room for us up here, or for both of us to be on this bed." And yeah, he rests his head in her lap and says, "Strange. It feels like there's nothing there." And then he takes off her undergarments and screams.
Yep. Yeah, and he says, "Your balls are gone," and she freaks out and goes and looks at the Dragon Balls, and she's like, "Oh no, they're here. You must have just been having a bad dream." And she hasn't realized she's not wearing underwear at this point either.
Yep. I have in my notes, I have important note. She is not wearing underpants at this point. Because that becomes a plot point, which is so bizarre.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else I've ever seen where a character not wearing underpants is a major plot point.
No, never have I. And he sort of dropped the panties on the floor a little bit before. Is this the bit where he goes outside to exercise?
Yeah.
It's like the morning routine, and they're getting up, and she's like getting coffee again and stuff, and he's like, "Ew, yeah, I don't like coffee. It's all bitter."
Yeah, so, he goes, "It doesn't taste good and makes me feel funny." And I'm like, "Same, Goku, but I still drink it."
Yeah, and then this is where he's like, "I'm going to go outside and exercise to start my day." And he just like crushes a rock. He like picks it up, throws it, and he's like smashing it and stuff. And he just like shatters this rock.
Mm-hmm. And then he picks up another rock and is about to smash it when he realizes it's actually a giant tortoise.
And it's a turtle, isn't it? It's got flippers.
Do tortoises, is that the difference? Tortoises have feet and turtles have flippers?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, yeah, it's a turtle then.
I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Or is it the other way around?
To the Googles.
Yeah, I think it might be a
tortoise versus turtle.
Yeah.
The major difference between the two is that tortoises dwell on land, while turtles live in the water some or nearly all of the time. So this would definitely be a turtle.
Yeah.
Because he belongs in the ocean, and he's over 100 miles away from the ocean. To which Bulma says, "Man, I wish we could help." And Goku's like, "Well, let's help him then." And she's like, "I didn't really mean I wanted to help him," which made me be like, "Man, Bulma, you're kind of a jerk."
Yep. And Goku's like, "Well, too bad. I'm going to help him." And he picks him up and puts him on his back, and Goku just starts running off in towards the sea, I guess. Like he just has this turtle on his back and he's running towards the sea.
Yep. And Bulma's like, "Fine, we're done. I'm gonna be on my own. I can handle myself." And then she looks around and there's just so many dinosaur monsters.
Yeah, and she's like, and she gets on the bike and chases after him.
Yep. Now, it's important to note, she took off pretty quick to chase after him. So she's still wearing her pajamas. So you know what that means.
That means she's not wearing any underwear.
So join us again next time for Dragon Ball Episode 3, The Turtle Hermit's Quinto Un, which I don't know what that means, also known as the Nimbus Cloud of Roshi.
Yeah.
It's like that's going to be our end, is she's still not wearing underwear.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the best animated shows ever, so far. Find the show on Twitter at BaseSFcast or email us at basesfcast@gmail.com. That's BASESFCAST. Our intro music is Funnin' and Sunnin', and our outro music is Motivator, both by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com, and licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Thanks again for listening, and tune in next time.
This has been a presentation
of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
@ProbablyWork
for more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.